All right, so who am I? I'm Bryson. I have a career of fucking things up, including presentations. I founded a few companies, so my nickname was Grim back when I worked in intelligence, and then I decided to start my own company called Grim because calling it Bryson sounded super douchey. Along the way, we had a large client come to us and say, hey, could you build us a one-off tool? And I was like, well, that sounds like product market research. So I created a company called Scythe. I'm the co-founder of the ICS Village. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. If you were not aware, we are running a capture the flag here where you can take some shots at critical infrastructure. And afterwards, at 2 o'clock in track 3, I will be leading an industrial control system tabletop exercise, and we'll be doing that again tomorrow. All right, so disclaimer. This presentation upsets you. It's your fucking problem, not mine. I'm doing my job. We're going to talk through some hard truths about the fact that, who here works in security? Who feels sad about that? If you're being honest, to keep your hands up, right? Here's the problem. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that you work in security. I'm sure most of you, when you go to the polite little parties, and somebody's like, hey, what do you do? And you're like, I work with computers. They're like, okay, and they already zone out. Because once you say security, they're like, what the fuck does that mean? Right? Nobody cares. The cavalry is not coming. And we're going to talk through the why, right? We're going to have some hard truths about why we are where we are and what we can do about it. The elephant. I mean, that had to show up, right? Throwing the elephant. Let's call the elephant in the room. What's the problem with elephants?
They're destructive.
They're destructive, right? Elephant's going to trample where an elephant's going to trample. If I feel like going over here, what are you going to do to stop it? Not much, except for not trying to get trampled, right? What else?
Big.
What else do elephants do? It's not a trick question. It's talking about an actual animal that I believe you've mostly seen in the zoo. If you leave your basement, get outside. What do elephants do? What are some characteristics of elephants?
They have the best memory.
They have the best memory. Fortunately, that metaphor does not work for what I'm doing with this, but thank you. Thanks for participating. That is absolutely correct, but I didn't expect somebody to give me a good one.
They spout water.
They spout water, right? What happens when the elephant goes to the bathroom? There's a lot of shit, right? They're big, they trample things, they leave messes, they do what they want to do. You might have an opinion about it, but what's it like talking to an elephant? So, what's my point here? The elephant's your boss. Anybody have a boss that really feels like that elephant? Yeah? Give me a story. Where's the time you had to clean up a bunch of shit after your boss?
Can I plead the fifth?
Did he plead the fifth? He's gonna watch the recording, or she's gonna watch the recording?
I know some people here.
Oh, okay. Is your boss in the room?
Yeah.
Put him out. So your boss is the elephant. All of those physical characteristics we just described about an elephant is your boss. Or if your boss is awesome, it's their boss, right? Bosses are elephants. Management hierarchy. So the inspiration I got for this talk was I lived in Florida and I got divorced. Is divorce cheap or expensive? It's expensive. Do you know why it's expensive?
It's worth it.
Because it's worth it. But I was broke. So humor aside and a whole lot of drinking, I needed to make some more money. And I got recruited up to Washington, D.C. By this vice president. And my job was, in that group, we ran the infrastructure refresh for the Department of State, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and Special Forces in Africa. So all of the infrastructure there, we were responsible for the configuration, provisioning, getting it over to wherever it was around the world for all the consulates, all the embassies, all of those locations, and making sure that it was secure and it was put in place. And so he hired me in because what he didn't quite know, but he sort of had a sense that he needed somebody like me. But the problem was, he wasn't in charge. He was one of those people who had big ideas, and all the people that worked for him were just like, yeah, we do whatever we want. And so I was the guy brought in essentially to be that change agent to make things be a little more aligned and efficient. Well, that requires the guy at the top to actually, be around. I showed up on day one, and I didn't see the guy for weeks. So I just kind of sat in my office and wandered around because I'm like, what am I going to do to create change in this organization when my executive sponsor won't even talk to me? So I went and did some things, and I was getting frustrated, right? This isn't even security, right? This is just simple human 101, management 101. And I could not find the fucking guy. So I found this book called Throwing the Elephant. And we're going to talk through some of the principles that I went through painfully and personally. We're going to tie them back into some things that we can do. So there is going to be, for the nerds in the room, we're like, I thought this was a technical talk. Too bad for you. There is some stuff, but we're going to talk about a lot of the things that are going to help you get where you get to do the fun stuff. Because the technical stuff is fun. It's the people stuff that sucks. So we're going to talk about some of that people stuff and then go into that. All right, so back on the fact that the elephant is your boss or their boss. The problem is this is how the boss sees themselves, right? If you remember the boss the first time, right? This is how we see them. The bosses view themselves. They have an ego. They don't think they're doing anything wrong. They are wonderful, awesome people. Just ask them. So, now we're going to turn this into where your boss fits in the hierarchy of the entire company. So, your boss, she's awesome, right? As much as you have some issues or whatever, she's a good person, right? She works with you in the trenches in security, right? She's a SOC manager. She's an analyst team lead. But where does security fit in the organization? Foreshadowing, we went to the bottom of the slide. So, above security is information technology. Above information technology is the business. And then, of course, the leadership for the overall business. What's the takeaway from this slide? Other than apparently I use Mr. Bean for everything, idiot. John, you made eye contact.
I would say if I want a promotion to put a Q-tip in my nose.
That's COVID testing.
What does this hierarchy represent?
Where the boots get fall?
Where's the what? Where the poop's gonna fall. That's true, right? Shit goes downhill, it never goes up.
It puts security under the auspices of who they're supposed to be patrolling.
Puts security under the auspices of who they are supposed to be controlling. Security controls people?
Patrol. Right?
Supposed to be.
Supposed to, okay. So, what is the purpose of a business?
Make money.
To make money. How many businesses are we talking in this scenario, right? Is security how they make money? Yeah, right? Very few. There are security organizations out there, and you ever want to see the cobbler doesn't have, kids doesn't have their own shoes. They never even follow their own security guidance. Let's see. I think it was Accenture lately who got hacked. I mean, we could just keep throwing Booz Allen Hamilton under the bus all day long. Thank you, Snowden. Try to be, I'll be here all week. So, the purpose of the business is not security. The purpose of the business is to make money for a purpose. If I make cookies, that's what we do. We make cookies, that's how we make money. To be a modern business making cookies, I need information technology to scale. What percentage of the budget goes, is relative between making those cookies and just the IT component? Right? It varies from industry to industry, but I think you're going to be looking at anywhere from 5% plus or minus. 1/20th of the expenditure, the revenue, the budget for that company is going to information technology. Okay. Next, security. What percentage of that budget, right? And then when you start thinking about, right, so you start breaking these down, where do we fit? We are resource-wise at the bottom. we are priority-wise at the bottom. And we haven't even gotten to the point yet that we're talking to people that think that the CD-ROMs that in the old days were where you had the coffee, right? If there's one thing we've accomplished in IT over decades, is that we now have every user trained to turn it off and turn it back on again before bugging us. That is the only thing we've accomplished. It's a win because it fixes 50% of their problems, right? So that's not a bad thing, but that's it. You know, hold on to that, put that up on a plaque, and congratulate ourselves. Good job, us. All right, so, room question. What percentage of boards have a dedicated committee for cyber security?
B.
Guess I should put a mask on when I come out to the audience.
I like that. You saw where I was going. Yeah. All right, what percent?
I guess A, because I'm a pessimist.
You're a pessimist.
You work in security, of course you're a pessimist.
I was also going to say A.
You're chicken shit.
B.
Lemming, wait.
B. B.
He says B, 10 to 25%. All right, so you're kind of like half lemming because you're like, well, we already did that one, I'm just going adjacent. Does anybody think higher than B? No, nobody? John? No. Oh, that jacket, by the way, that's pretty suave. You don't know John Pamdek, he's awesome.
You know what? I'll go higher, but they're not funded and nobody listens to them, and it's just lip service to check a box.
Say that again.
I'm gonna go higher than B, but only to pay lip service and check a box to say they're compliant. But they don't get any money and nobody listens to them.
Okay, so we think there are a greater percentage that have a dedicated committee for cybersecurity at the, typically it's gonna be the board level,
Just a figure.
but they're not funded.
Nobody listens to them.
Okay, nobody listens to them. All right, so the answer is, of course,
Of course. Jump up.
less than 10%. It's actually 9. So first thing I'm going to point out that, break your arm off, pat yourself on the back. You notice here at the bottom, I put references to everything that I say. Any source, anything I steal, I don't steal it, I share it, and I make sure that I have that. So I'm pretty sure the presentation slides will be available afterward. You ever want to go in further detail? Oh, yeah. The Cyber Things guy says it is. Stranger Things. Sorry, I don't know how. Oh, it does say Cyber
Yeah,
Things.
it does.
Eyesight still works. Seriously?
It's got short range, so you stay on stage.
Is it IR? There you go.
There you go. I think it's telling me I should go back up on stage. Fuck you, remote.
I have a second mic, I can wander.
How do you really?
Yeah, didn't know I was going to get one coming. Okay. Not that I need one. All right. How many businesses are there in the United States? Throw them out.
A shit ton.
A shit ton. 1 metric shit ton of business.
2 shit tons.
2 shit tons. All right, so how many businesses are there?
10 million.
10 million. Higher or lower, anybody?
Way higher.
Yeah.
Higher.
Use numbers.
Way a shitload more.
No, I'm afraid I need it quantified. 500 million.
501.
Hold on, I want to make sure I understand this. There are more businesses than there are people.
Right. Yeah.
What? They can run multiple businesses, that's true. And there are shell companies, and I mean, okay. I actually have 3. If you remember on the bio, I actually listed them. All right, so between 10 million and 501 million, the answer is there are $32.5 million businesses. There's the reference at the bottom.
I was below.
So, how many have security?
Oh.
What was that?
9% of that.
9% of that? Well, so it was kind of a trick question on that because I said a dedicated committee. Sometimes risk is handled at the risk management level, or cybersecurity is embedded inside risk management. So it was kind of a trick question on it being a dedicated committee. But
What do you mean by
most of these businesses don't even have committees, actually. What?
I'm willing to say 25%.
25%. So 25% is about 8 million. Okay.
Is
Anyone
that
plus?
security at all?
What?
or
What do you mean security?
23.
23 million.
No, 23.
Oh, just 23. Well, if we're going that way, the real answer is 0.
What do you mean by security?
Hence my joke about 0. So how I came up with this statistic is I actually looked, and the reference is that 60% have invest in security, like actually pay for security. So it was a very low bar. And then this is something I always like to do at the hacker conferences. This is a new slide, but the bottom part is a statistic I've used before, which is how many of them have a red team?
23.
That's actually pretty close, right? Like, can you see it? You see where it fits relative, right? There is a very small percentage. So this is out of this presentation, which is one of the things I would castigate this industry, where we have experts come up here. I'm not an expert, but come up here and talk. They are addressing the top of the top percent in all of the ideas they got. Most talks address that percentage. This is the world. This is the world we actually live in. There are a few of us who are privileged to work at companies that have the budgets of small countries, finance. The rest of us don't. I have gone across multiple industries. I have been at some of the largest manufacturers, and what they're given, right, it's like a rounding error for what I see elsewhere. And these are large listed companies, right? Fortune 500, Fortune 200. Okay, so the rules of the Serengeti, we're going back into the elephant metaphor. Despite the fact the elephant has good memory, your boss doesn't. So the rules are, there are two kinds of village chiefs. Your leadership cares about security, your leadership doesn't care about security. There are no amount of heroics, awesome sauce tooling, or anything you can do that can get past that point. If you cannot convince the leadership that what you do matters,
It doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. And it's why you're sad every morning and you cry in your Wheaties. Don't be sad. Change jobs or fix your leadership, right? Okay, so Maslow's hierarchy, I adapted this, but I think you can get the point where I was putting the hierarchy of things. But in the village, the hierarchy is, I need water, then I need food, then I need shelter, and then I need to be able to secure my village. Kind of looks like the same thing we saw when we put the priorities of where our boss fit in the hierarchy up to business and leadership. Huh. So a micro and macro insight into psychology and organization management. This is where we fit. These are the rules of the Serengeti, and they are immutable. You can't change that order. You can't create more budget that's above the budget that's available. You can't get more interest than above the interest that's above you. Because we're a cost center, right? We might support assuring that profit continues. We do not generate profit. We're not alone in that. Imagine working in HR. They do it. People do it apparently. But that's what they face too, right? So just give you an example, like we're not the only ones on this part of the chain, but we don't care about them, we only care about ourselves right now, so. All right, so convincing the elephant. Okay. All right, so there's 3 directions of management. Manage up, manage your boss. Manage sideways, work with your peers. And then the one that typically everybody, of course, understands and thinks about is managing down, because it's easy. I'm the boss, do these things. But there's 3 levels of management. It's not just you managing your team, it's working with your other peers to accomplish things, and of course, throwing the elephant. How do we get the boss above us to do what we want? So some of the ideas just on the sideways, and we're gonna go through each 3 of these, but is the kind of an asterisk part, which is what I call the security champion program. So peers are other folks in our organization. Security champion is the idea that we can co-opt folks in other villages in the organization to support our goals, right? I'm not just working with this team lead and this team lead that I see on a daily basis, but I'm going cross-functional outside of security to do it. And we're gonna go into some detail about that. Okay, so, convincing the elephant. They're a big lumbering beast. The important thing is, where are they coming from? And you can see I overemphasize them. So how do you find this out? How do you answer what there is? You ask them. Isn't that weird? You can actually ask people things and they will give you answers? It's fucking phenomenal. But then what? What do you have to do? Listen. A lot of times in our space, we're really fond of, we're thinking we have a dialogue, and mostly what we're doing is just trying to get to some tactical point. We don't communicate, we talk. Right? Active listening, understanding, iterating through asking, getting something, and double checking and asking, and building on that. You will get all of those components of what the elephant wants. Because that's a great starting point. I was an Army officer. I didn't just go into the battlefield. I was given an intelligence preparation brief that said, this is what the situation was. We didn't just show up with guns and go, okay, we're going that way, right? Why would you do that with your boss? If you're trying to do something, understand who you're working with. Okay. What does your village do, right? Your boss and you work in this village. First job I had when I got out of the Army, and I promise everything I say is not exaggerated, these are 100% true. In the job interview, I told them I didn't even know what the title meant. And they hired me. I was a global commodity manager in supply chain management. Yeah, I didn't know what that meant. So you're hired? I'm like, oh, okay. What do I do? You figure it out. 2 months later, I just got fired. But the thing that I found interesting, so I did that job for about a year, and because at the time I really just wanted to get out of IT, like all of us. I'm like, yeah, screw this, computers suck. And then I went and spent a year doing that, and it was like, this isn't hard. And a position opened up for me to be a global IT configuration manager and build an entire department from scratch and establish process across this multinational manufacturing company and create a CMDB, configuration management database. I actually created a fully fledged CMDB from scratch and populated it with processes to keep it in line.
I'm impressed. Yeah.
That's actually a talk I've been asked to give because for a long time, true story, as I'm up here bearing my soul, is I was ashamed that I had done that because I'm in the hacker community, and I figured people would think less of me because I built a CMDB. You know what's funny? What is 80% of security is configuration management? What do I got? What's the state? So, point was, so I'm there now in the IT organization again, and I was shocked. Nobody in the IT organization knew what the company did. I did because I actually worked the manufacturing side. I worked the suppliers. Like I walked the floors, I went to the facilities and saw how we built everything we built. I was a part of that. Nobody in IT had any clue. Like, I don't know, like airplanes or something. Have you ever like talked to like the engineering manager, like who sits, 2 doors down? No? But he really pisses me off that he doesn't do what I ask. Huh, but you don't know what he does. So understand your village. And there's lots of ways to understand the village. So like I said, walk the floor. There's no reason this is assuming you can actually have physical access to the office in the COVID times, but there's no reason that you shouldn't walk the floor and go meet other folks that are outside of information technology, outside of security. Learn what your village does. And the example we said earlier about the cookies. Go eat some cookies. Put on some PPE and walk the floor and see the cookies coming out. Ask some random folks about it. Why not? What's stopping you? And then reading. So, did you know that if you're a public company, they are required to produce details about everything they're doing? And it's available for you to read? They tell you what's important to them. You will actually, if you want to see where your leadership thinks of cybersecurity, they will list it on that report. They will say, this is the ranking of where cybersecurity is important to us. Or, Another giveaway is you don't see it in the report. But they tell you they have to. Go look it up, read it, go to investor briefings, listen to your CEO squirm, laugh at them, and then realize you work for them. News articles, because of course your stuff produces the news, and then this is a hat tip to Jacob Williams, Malware Jake, that he gave me the idea of all of these executives have MBA reading books, right? They all have this MBA list of I'm reading, from good to great, or whatever that is. In fact, Throwing the Elephant's probably on that list like that. You'll learn their language, right? You might not be an exec, but who are you trying to sell and convince? An executive. What's the language and what's their mantra? Well, they read books for them. Okay, so getting the right equipment. For those of you who haven't seen this is called the Cyber Defense Matrix. One of the smartest people in cyber that I know, his name is Sunil Yu. And at RSA, he debuted this. And what it does is on the left side, we go down all the classes of different kinds of assets and people. And the top side are the phases of security. Starting with identification, right? Configuration management, what do I got? Then protection, my ability to keep you out. You're gonna get in. What's my ability to detect, to understand what's happened, and then recover from that breach or attack. Anything you have in your organization should be able to fit in that matrix. Any tool you have, you should understand it against that, right? So knowing what you've already got in-house or available, mapped to this will give you the idea of where your gaps are, which are probably gonna be the kinds of things that you want because you're gonna have felt those gaps. Well, now you have a way to put it in order to go and decide where you're at, what capabilities you have, and what you want to do. As an Army officer, I always have to simplify everything, so I'm sure you've all seen the Lockheed Martin kill chain, you've seen MITRE ATT&CK and all of its infinite and expanding glory. The world is really just 3 attack phases. Reconnaissance, I'm learning about you. Initial access, I'm breaking in. Post-access, I'm doing shit. And the business value, the context of that increases in post-access. Reconnaissance, not a lot of control I can have around that. It's really hard for me to really get a lot of intricate detail in what you're doing. Yeah, if I'm in that top of the top percent, I might have my entire dedicated threat intelligence organization scraping the dark web for them talking about my company at all, and what tools are about to come out, but how many of you have access to that? Toward what purpose, right? When you have that much money, you get to do those kinds of things. Initial access. Does anybody think that there is a system that a hacker, proverbially writ large, approaching infinity, can't hack? Everything is hackable. Give me any scenario, I guarantee you there is a way to hack it. I had someone say, well, I could just turn the computer off. Guess what? It could still be done. Post-access is where the money is made, though, literally, right? Initial access, right? The burglar has broken in, opened the door. They haven't stepped in yet. They haven't done anything. What they do next is what you care about and what you can control. That's where you want to be able to focus again, as for those of you who are aware, this is where the increased focus on detection engineering has come from. So the overall model is assume breach. I'm going to operate under the assumption they're going to get in, and I'm going to focus on how do I find them as quickly as possible. What's the most efficient way to do that? So I forgot the metaphor. So my joke here is elephants are scared of fire, right? So in terms of getting your boss convinced to do something, create some fire, right? Elephants move with fire. They are afraid of fire. When we were looking at things of how do I get an elephant to move? How do I throw that elephant? Demonstrating vulnerability, demonstrating risk does that. So that's how we're going to create fire. Okay, so what we want to do by creating this fire is understand that this is an expert data-driven approach. Not that we're just shouting fire in the theater, right? Here's the problem, we have to do this.
Sorry, so, great, create a fire, but what if there's a fire and your boss is already too scared of the fire and they stop doing anything?
So by showing them that there's risk, they get paralyzed?
See, it's happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back to my earlier part about there's 2 kinds of village chiefs. That would be change job moment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, exactly. If I can't throw the elephant, go find another one, right?
Run away.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
the challenge,
that's our
though,
vote. Sorry,
the
go
other
ahead.
the challenge is you have to speak their language.
Yes.
You can't say there's a fire.
Yes.
No.
They don't care.
Yep,
It's like
exactly.
This can cost us X number of dollars.
Yep.
Yeah.
They wake up, they move, because now you're speaking profits and losses, and that's at the end of the day, that's the discussion you have to have.
Absolutely. That's our next few slides.
All right, cool.
Sorry.
I love it. No, it's great. So if you haven't picked up on this, if I'm going to pick on you, you get to pick on me. You get to jump in. This is a team effort. Okay, so what we're trying to do here is drive context with expert demonstration. We're not trying to just say there's a problem, you have to fix this, because again, going back to where we fit on the list of things, we may not be the top priority. We may not be number 2. So in terms of trying to make change, you can't expect to go from, say, number 7 on the list to be number 1 overnight. Yeah? Okay? So let's say you don't know how to make fire. You don't have a threat intelligence group. So this is I love giving simple practical advice that is cheap, is free, and you can actually go do it immediately. Because again, most experts come up and they will spend entire talks on, well, just do threat modeling and do threat intelligence, blah, blah, and it's like, okay, like how am I supposed to go back to my workplace and do that? So here's a cheap one. Go to MITRE ATT&CK site. They have a list of all of the known groups that do attacks. Type in your industry, just a simple text search. It will show you every group that has ever targeted your industry. Boom, done. You now have your exact threat groups. Oh, but, okay, thanks Bryson, but how do I actually make them happen? There's a hyperlink to each one that shows you exactly how they do it. You now have a detailed plan of techniques of what they do. Threat intelligence for free. Grading fire. Work with other zookeepers. Who says you have to do this on your own? Right? Elephants are difficult. Why would you try to tackle it by yourself? Who's heard of purple teaming? Besides the guy wearing the purple shirt. Say hi, Tim. Hi. So who's heard of purple teaming?
From him.
Oh, from him? From the guy with the purple shirt? Oh, did you go to his purple team talk this morning? Did you talk this morning, Tim? You did. What did you talk about? Purple maturity model. I feel like that has something to do with purple teaming. Sorry, I missed it. It sounded wonderful. He says it was wonderful.
He did good.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh, you got to see it too?
Yep.
So what's a purple team?
Red and blue.
Red and blue.
In between, make them all talk.
Anyone else feel the finger paints coming on? I need purple.
Make them all talk the same language.
Right, so it is a collaborative milestone-driven approach / process, right? Instead of red versus blue, it's red and blue. And we're gonna work together to do that, right? I'm gonna bring in other zookeepers and we're going to light fire together. And we're going to analyze that fire and we're gonna work through it. Don't make me nervous, I got 20 minutes. So what do we get from that, right? We get insight, we get immediate improvements. This is one of the reasons purple teaming has become popular, is because instead of the old way of hacker du jour, whether it's internal or external, disappears, comes back in X period of time and says, fix it. How many of you have ever seen an assessment where a year later, the assessment was the same result? Yeah, why? Why does that happen? Because everybody's busy. And so having these folks come back with a list of all the holes in my organization, what, now I'm supposed to find more time to do it? Has anybody seen a truly shitty assessment report? No? Nobody's ever seen a bad report?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, I guarantee you everybody's received a Nessa scan. Here you go. Thanks. What? Yeah, exactly. It's, yeah, here, there's 30,000 items. Thunk. Drop everything you're doing and do that. No, it doesn't work, right? So that's where we're doing that. And then what comes out of that is, again, business context. I want to do this in the context of what matters to the business. When I'm picking something to evaluate, whether that is a control, whether that is an asset, whether that is a system of systems, whether that is a process, It's something that's important to the business that I want to be doing it with. I'm not just on my own going like, well, this would be fun in the lab. And so by doing that, you're already aligned with both the improvements to show to the business, that you're talking to the business and can demonstrate that. And so tools, training, communication, sharing, those are all the components of that. We'll go into more detail. So building a plan shouldn't be complicated. What's my threat? How do I implement my threat against what do I want to do it with? Actually do it, see what happens, iterate like that together, improvement. Done. Who's actually done a purple team exercise in their work? You have? Mm-hmm. How often do y'all do purple teams? Is there a cadence yet, or you just?
Yeah, so we do a complete purple team every 6 months.
Okay, so every 6 months, so biannually. And how much does? And I mean, this is not really a leading question, although I'm going to phrase it that way. How much do the team members actually like the purple team exercise?
The first time, no.
Nobody likes change.
The second time, absolutely, because
Yeah.
everyone saw the value of it.
Because they saw the value. What was the value?
The value is now they could focus on what they needed to do. It wasn't just this, here's your quality scan, fix it. It's here's the things that that they were able to do on the red side. Let's see how we can stop it. And we could focus what we were working on instead of trying to, don't eat the elephant in one bite.
Yeah.
Right? Knife and a fork, take a chunk at a time and work through it.
Thank you for including an elephant aphorism in there.
I just had to.
20 bucks is in the mail. Okay, so the best price of everything is free. So I gave free advice on how to start fire. I'm going to give free advice on how to actually turn that into fire. So a few of us, including George Corchias and Adam Ashinchi, who's over at Red Canary in charge of the Atomic Red Team program, a couple of years ago, we came up with this idea called the C2 Matrix. So where this came out of was I was the last speaker at the last DerbyCon, and I was starting to push this idea of adversary emulation. And so I wanted free tools that are out there to do that. Well, what's the problem with things that are free?
They're worth it.
They're worth it, right? You get what you pay for. So turns out a lot of garage code, hacked up stuff trying to demonstrate, the demo gods were not kind. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure things out. And so what we did is we created a community-based effort where we have folks in the community catalog everything that's out there. How does it work? How does it talk? What are these characteristics? So for you, when you want to go create fire, it has a list of every C2 that we know of. There are over 80 some that are currently there. And you can say, well, based on the threat intelligence, what I'm trying to do and my capabilities, I want to do these things. And it'll just tell you what's available that does that. Including, we did a collaboration with SANS Institute and created a free Kali VM that has 10 of these tools already installed and put together for you, all for free.
Nice.
Thank you. Okay, so emulating ransomware. Ransomware seems to be kind of a thing, right? Who was here for the Malwarebytes ransomware talk? Right? We're talking, ransomware is a big deal. But the problem with ransomware is it's destructive. So testing destruction, right? We really are trying to emulate or simulate fire. We're not trying to create actual fire. Our boss is going to show up and then we're going to get fired. That was kind of funny. No, damn it. Dad joke failed. So how do you create fire that looks realistic but doesn't actually burn anything? So there's some solutions here. One, creating it on dummy data. And so I have some examples here where you can, one, there's a site which will go and create simulated data to the fields you want, which could also be useful for looking at detections, could be useful for validating DLP, any of those things. Free site out there, put it together for you. Or you can just create dummy files. So in the attack logic I have on the right of the test I'm running here, it goes and creates a folder, hit into the user, populates it with just dummy-sized files of garbage, then locally encrypts them with the password, calls home and says, all right, I've done this, and then pulls down a notepad file, text file, pops it up and says, you've been ransomware, contact IT, right? Does all of the host and network activities of ransomware, but I haven't affected the user. So start simple. Who's heard of PowerShell? Does your company use PowerShell? Yes. You'd be surprised how many people don't know the answer to that. Did an assessment last year, they didn't know they were using PowerShell. Why do attackers like PowerShell?
Because it's already there.
Because it's already there. Hackers are like you. We're lazy. I'm not going to do more work than I have to. So if you are giving me the tools that are there, I'm just going to take advantage of them. PowerShell is phenomenally powerful. So all I did was create a really simple basic thing. Command line call of PowerShell. Run who am I? Why would I run who am I? See if I got privilege, that's one answer. What else?
Tells you everything about what the system.
Yeah, so I'm doing a basic recon. Turns out hackers are not omniscient. I don't know where I am half the time when I start. So I want to start by going, where am I? More importantly, like what privileges I have, where I am relative to what's of interest at me. Should the average user be running who am I? They can even find the command line interface, that's a win. Let alone run who am I. So we've now gotten this back into something that is innocuous, that's already there. The context of it makes it suspicious. This is where we're getting into that detection engineering. When we start looking at how we create fire in our environment in a valuable way for us to build up our detections for engineering. Context, simple things. Okay, so who's heard of Sysmon? What's Sysmon? I keep thinking on this middle table. Does anybody else want to answer?
It's the most wonderful tool created by St. Brysons.
Mark Brysons at Microsoft wrote a device driver called Sysmon. It's free. Since it's written by Microsoft, guess what? It doesn't break with Microsoft. Right? Isn't that the fun part when you have a third-party thing, particularly if you've ever worked with Mac? Good luck, right? There is a Linux version that's coming out, but Sysmon is a device driver that is just capturing enriched logging for you. So what does that get me? When I'm trying to drive enhanced detections, I need to start with improving my visibility to correlate that data so that when I alert, it's a high fidelity alert. So in this case, something simple, right? Event ID 1 is process creation of who am I, which I can then tie to the context of where was it run, because chances are, again, how often should that be run in my enterprise? Something very simple. PowerShell.exe. PowerShell.exe tied to a network connection going out, right? Should I see a PowerShell command happen and then something happen on DNS?
No.
Probably not. Sysmon allows a really easy way to put that together for you. And it's free, right? Free, 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 free. Are we seeing a trend? And that one actually is not free with an asterisk. That's the real deal. That one is like highly engineered. They should be charging for it. They probably are going to at some point. See that coming. All right, living off the land binaries and scripts. So I have here from my good friend over in Europe, Olaf Hartong. They did an analysis of all of the living off the land binaries and scripts that were used in attacks by percentage. So in terms of the things that are already there that an attacker wants to go to start that fire themselves, there's a list for you to start looking at. So you can prioritize based on what's happening out there in the real world. And of course, with the link. Working with other zookeepers, so I mentioned the Security Champions program. Now we're going to step outside of security, because there are other zookeepers in this organization. So a Security Champion program is going to, one, co-opt them for you, and two, make your life easier doing it, to help wrestle those elephants. So how do we get people and other organizations to be a part of what we're doing? Why do we want to do that? I mean, isn't it easier if there was just sort of one person, like Jane for HR, Bob for finance, that just knew a little bit more about security, that just kind of cared that it existed, that thinks about you occasionally, perhaps wistfully? So that when somebody in finance or HR has a question, there's a natural point of contact for them to go to, who, again, actually kind of cares you exist. That sounds pretty cool. That's a Security Champion program. That's bringing other zookeepers in to help you wrestle that elephant. Now, the problem, of course, is You're working with elephants and they're working with alligators. So how do we speak to them, right? Go back to earlier where we talked about understanding them, same principle applies. And so when we go and recruit them, we need to find them and engage them. You're not going to HR and say, offer me a sacrifice. Volunteering anybody doesn't help. But come up with different events, lunch and learns, different things to attract them. Find who naturally has an interest. There's your target. There's your champion. Bring them into the fold. To that purple team exercise. Imagine being in HR and getting to sit on something like that. That's kind of cool. They never get invited to things like that. What kinds of ideas might pop out from them getting to be a part of that? I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, you don't know until you do it.
Exactly. And do you think somebody who's mildly interested would find that really interesting compared to their daily life?
Absolutely.
Yes.
A lot of what we've seen, I mean, we do tabletops for incident response every year, and we do invite HR. We invite pretty much anybody that it might affect, like this, you know, imaginary thing that we do a tabletop. And now, yeah,
No, please go.
no, it's okay.
Allow me to worry about time. You're good.
Okay.
They're going to throw tomatoes at me, not
But
you.
you say, don't ever do this and use this. They go, we've used that program for 10 years. The one that is the security risk.
Sorry. No, a lot of times you see, like, you talk to people, like, you know, if you say HR never use, you know, the Powershell give your data away app. And they're like, oh, we use that for business for 10 years. You learn stuff like that.
Yep. All right, so I do have a slide, if I missed it already, where I do talk about tabletop exercises, choose your own adventures. There are lots of ways that, again, we're lowering the technical bar and enabling to engage them in a way that's fun, makes it a little more game-like, and they learn something from it. The think tank I'm associated where I'm a senior fellow, I do the annual IT training, and what I do is I walk them through an incident response for choose your own adventure that I wrote. And so they don't have to understand anything about what's an endpoint, what's a firewall, because that's abstracted, right? You're in the role, the presumed knowledge there is in the adventure you're taking, and we're gonna walk you through it, and you're gonna learn what happens as a result, and they love it. They love it. So, making trumpeting noises here, in short, put it in context, show improvement over time. If you're not sure where to start, pick the most important things, so I call them the crown jewels, assets. What matters there, start there, establish control there. You're gonna get the business buy-in, they're gonna care about that, and then you can work from there. So what do execs/elephants love? They love metrics, right? So, metrics. So I created this, I call it the detection maturity model. So for security, this is the path you wanna take. Start with visibility, what can I log? Based on that, how do I start building higher level logic on top of it? Based on that, how do I start to tie it into business context? From there, temporal, right? I've just measured what do I see, what do I not see. Now I'm going to start measuring how quickly do I see it or should I have seen it and breaking that down, right? What did the tool see? What did that person see that? How long did it take for them to action and understand it? And then how long did it take to complete that process, right? Then let's turn that into a continuous element tied into business. Let's find out over time where we go.
Understand your audience and target your metrics to your audience. If you're trying to talk to the CEO and you talk about how many detections we had for a specific vulnerability,
Yep.
he will not care.
Nope.
And if he doesn't care about that, he won't care about anything else because you just lost it.
So we emulated the North Korean criminal gang that does this kind of thing. It was against this part of our business. It took us this long to find it and recover from it, and that meant this amount of loss.
Exactly.
Boom. It's not hard when you think about it.
Nope.
And use different language when you're talking with a different part of the organization. I was working with a marketing company, manufacturing company, and I was talking with the engineering group. And we were talking about threat modeling and all this, and it's like, okay, so I got this thing, do you guys ever do stuff like that? They said, yeah, we use FMEA. Okay, we'll use your framework.
Tell the audience what FMEA is.
Failure mode and effects analysis.
Yep.
Basically, it's a way that they look at if this particular electrical connection fails, what happens. And so we walked through this security event from an FMEA perspective. And we're going through and I'm using them to get them what the scores are. And I get one, and I walk through the logic and they say, so what score do you think it has? And I say, well, I think this is a 10. And the room went silent. Like, what? What did I say? He said, well, when we're doing one of these for real, if anything scores a 10, the rule is you stop the meeting, you walk out, you find the general manager, you bring him in, and you explain what happened. And they said, okay, so are you sure this is a 10? I said, well, your rules say this and this and this and this, so yeah, it's a 10. All of a sudden, I had a bunch of engineering friends who would come back to me and they said, well, we're developing this new thing. We would like to have you look at it before we write anything. Awesome. It works, but you gotta talk their language.
Yeah.
That's a really cool story.
And it helps you throw somebody else's elephant.
Oh.
Find other zookeepers. So wrapping this up, as we already jumped ahead on the slides, tabletop exercise. Reminder, I'm going to be leading a tabletop exercise for the ICS Village in 2 minutes. I call this Purple Team Plus, so you can all be the first to hear of this idea. So this is something we've done a couple of times. I haven't quite coalesced it to turn it into research at a talk. But the idea I came up with the Purple Team Plus is typically a Purple Team is an operational level exercise, right? I'm bringing red, I'm bringing blue. We can have cross-functional elements at that level. But the idea I've come up with, and like I said, done a couple of times, is in parallel, doing a tabletop exercise with the executives tied to that, right? So, hey, team, C-suite, as of this moment, we don't know what it is, but this APT has XYZ as far as we can tell, right? And it's actually over here running, and then you're going back and forth. As this is progressing and demonstrating what that is, we're leading them through a tabletop exercise at the executive level of what that is. So stay tuned. I'm going to be putting that together. Still figuring it out.
Ransomware is a really good.
What's that?
Ransomware is a really good exercise to do on all sides because you get general counsel in, you get the CFO in. How are you going to pay Bitcoin?
Public relations.
You're going to do this. You get everyone. Yeah, you bring and you run 2 separate exercises together.
Yep. So, how we fight against the jungle, and of course, it's always a quest for more money. Spaceballs reference, breaking out the elephant thing. Thank you.